So, I wanted to talk a little bit about stress and how stress has manifested and exacerbated itself in my creative life and some things that I did to kind of get control over it and the journey that I'm on with it because it's still a journey. So, when I think about stress and where it could have planted itself in my life, I tend to think about my time as a kid and the stress that I was under as a child growing up in my household. I think that is when, you know, and I probably remember the first kind of shock to my nervous system. I grew up in like a very kind of a violent household. And when the violence started, or at least when I became aware of it um, with my own eyes, I think that was when stress was the first time stress entered my life. And it just stayed. And so one of the things about me is, or one of the things that I learned about myself as I got older, in my, in my 30s, mid 30s, was that one of the things that I learned about myself in sometime in my 30s, I realized that I had a real problem with allowing myself to relax, right? So I realized that I had developed this this issue with relaxing. I just couldn't do it. I've always led a kind of busy life, all the way dating back to when I was a kid. And so the good thing about that is that I developed and cultivated a really high work ethic for myself. The problem with that was I didn't learn anything about balance. So I was the kid who always had something to do. I always had something to do. So, my dad had us in sports. So we were always had a practice. I played basketball for many years in my childhood, and baseball, and I was even on a bowling league. And so we were always in practice, or always had a game to go to. I grew up as a military brat. And I'm kind of one of those unique cases because I am a military brat on both sides. So both of my parents were military for a lot of years, both of them. So I grew up in and around military bases, until I was 17. And even being in a military environment, always having military parents, I think I can't speak for how it affected other people. Like, we call them dependents, the kids. But for me, I think I couldn't help but pick up certain things from being around the military, like things about discipline, things about structure, right? But in addition to that, and outside of that, again, I was a kid who always had something to do, whether it was sports, and then I also was always very involved in school activities. So if it wasn't, some project that I was working on for school or some activity that I was working on for school, I was in some sort of after school club, not after school program, but after school club. Um, Things like whether it was some sort of like music club. I remember being in fifth grade, and at this point, I lived in Atlanta briefly as a child for 2 years, and so I remember being in like this a chorus, like a chorus club. I remember being in a recorder club. I think in like fifth grade, I started learning to play the recorder as a precursor to me being a band kid. I was a band kid in middle school and high school. Saxophone, clarinet, bass clarinet, tenor sax, alto sax. Um, uh, yeah, after school activities, I was in the academic bowl, what they call the academic bowl, which was the club where you have the buzzers, like quiz kind of thing, and you have the buzzers, and we used to go travel around to other schools and compete against them on like after school and on weekends. Um, uh, I almost played. I tried out for my middle school. I think seventh grade year. Before my seventh grade year, I tried out for the my school's basketball team. I didn't make it because I didn't want to make it at that time. Um, I was doing things like science club and all kinds of club, National Honor Society, student council. I was always in student council. It seems what they call student council at the time. I think they call it student government now. Um, so many things, science clubs and just all kinds of things. And so I got used to, and that was just, that was sports, and that was after school activities related to school. But then outside of that, I was always finding something to do, something, usually something creative. If I wasn't reading books, I was always reading books, always books in my hand. Um, Novels, I was always reading novels. But if it wasn't doing those things, I was doing something creative like calligraphy or letter writing. Sometimes being a military kid, sometimes your parents are what they call TDY, which means they're stationed somewhere else, a lot of times in another country. And, I remember the time when my mom was stationed in Germany, and we just were, back at home with my dad, and um, writing letters. I think my mom got me into the letter writing thing. And I used to do my own science experiments at home. I used to have big train, those model train sets where you have all the miniatures and the miniature trains, and you build a whole. I did that. I was into that. I was into when computers started happening with like Microsoft 95, I think it was called. I was big into like printing things, printing pictures, printing. When Valentine's Day came around, I was giving the whole class printed, customized Valentine's printed from my printer. Uh, I was always doing something creative or something to keep myself busy. And so that is really where I cultivated a life of busyness without balance. And I continued that all the way up through high school. In high school, same thing. By then, I was in the marching band, still doing stuff like student council. I was the editor of my my high school newspaper for like 2 or 3 years. A couple newspapers actually. I was the actual editor in chief actually. That's how I got, kind of my foundational journalistic skills. Um, marching band. If you've been in marching bands are busy. They're busy. If you're not practicing, you know, practicing on your own, then you're at band practice, and if you're not at band practice, you're getting ready for a game, or getting ready to travel to an away game or a competition. um and not to mention things that I may have been doing, like, my mom had us in church at certain points in our life, and so helping out with church and the activities with that. um you know so many things. So anyway, my point is, I cultivated a life of busyness all the way from like kindergarten onward, right? All the way up into college. um I had by then decided I wanted to be a filmmaker, before I went into college, and I went to Florida State University. And while I was there, I kept not getting into the film school, and so I was like, well, I don't want to wait, and I'll talk about this in a different video too, but I don't want to wait to start my filmmaking career or to start making films to get into the film school. So I went and I read books, and I figured out how do people become filmmakers without going to film school, because I wasn't getting into the film school for some reason. They only took 15 kids a year, and I was never one of them into the film program that FSU has. And so then once I figured out how to do it myself, then I was now making myself busy with film projects, and then that consumed my life at that point for many years. And so again, in all of this, I'm just kind of perpetuating kind of like an unhealthy lifestyle. I didn't realize it, of course, when you're younger, but when you get older, you kind of start to see. And then when you do start to see, you realize, oh, I'm stuck in a lifestyle. I'm stuck. Like, even when you try to stop, you try to change it, it's not easy. Like, you're stuck at it, So, so I continued on, and then from college, I jumped into Hollywood, still maintaining like an extreme, almost kind of crazed level of busyness. And I just carried that throughout my career. And I don't think I really started thinking that something was wrong with that until I was about, maybe I was, I really struggled with it when I was a part of a company, a filmmaking collective. And I think that was when it really started to kind of catch up to me that something was wrong with my work lifestyle and my life. And I really started to see like I didn't have any balance, and that the lack of balance was really starting to show its effects. And so how it showed in my life, where I realized, okay, I have to make some changes, otherwise, I honestly felt during those times, which was around 2014, 2015. By then, I had been in the film industry for like 11 years, like 10, 11 years. And I honestly felt like the level of busyness that I had at that time, I think I had to be around, let's see, so that's 23, so early 30s. I thought I was gonna die. I thought I was going to work myself to death. That's how it felt. I was putting so much on myself. And I was also realizing that as I was struggling with that, the people around me, I felt that the people around me, maybe this is not all the way true, I don't know, I'd have to break this down some more, maybe with them. But how I felt at the time is, even the people that I was working with, and we were working towards our Hollywood dreams, I felt like they were, I felt like they would say? I feel like I felt like they were comfortable watching me work myself to death. That's how I felt. Um, that's how I felt at the time. Because I felt like, you know, that's how I felt. And so anyway, uh, it got bad is the point. And also by then, in order to combat the stress along the way, and this is also something that kind of creeped up on me, um, I was eating. I was eating to address my stress, to relieve my stress, to um, mitigate my stress, because my hours, the hours of my life, um, outside of, maybe if I was working like a regular job, regular 9 to 5, or even 9 to 5, or even when I was in college, outside of those hours, my hours were crazy, were irregular. I would stay up all night editing or writing, or I would be out on set when I should have been maybe home resting. Um, Balancing going to class with trying to be a filmmaker while you're in college, with a full what do they call it? A full schedule, where you're taking the max number of credits for the semester. That was always me. I was always taking the max, and then I was keeping up. It was just ridiculous, the amount that I was putting on myself. And I think there were people in my life that were lightly trying to maybe get me to realize that the pace was not healthy. And I'm sure I heard it, but I don't think I really processed it. So maybe there were people that did try to help. But I think I felt like if you really wanted to get through to me, then you would do it differently, in a way that actually would get across to me. But I felt like they were just throwing stuff out there, but they didn't care how they felt, or what they were saying landed with me. So it didn't land. I felt like if you really want to get through to me, you should have been able to. You knew me, supposedly. But anyway, the pace, man, that I was keeping up, and it was by then, once you get, go through your teen years, into college, out of high school, into college, you go through college, or after college, you're working in your industry. By then you've cultivated a way of living that, or at least me, I cultivated a way of living I wasn't even that conscious of, until I was in this group with my business partners, and for 3 years. And I think that was when I really came undone. The amount of additional stress that I was putting on myself, that the situation put on me, I just started acting out in so many ways. And by then I had put on so much weight, because you're working on you have this lifestyle that includes all these irregular hours. You're also eating irregularly, and a lot of times, when I would make myself eat, or allow myself to eat, would maybe be late at night, where only you could and you're tired from whatever your day looked like, and you just want to just grab something to eat and go home and go to sleep. That's how it was, and that was a really bad lifestyle choice for me, because you're putting on weight, and then you starting to notice you're putting on weight. I was always a really skinny kid, and food ended up being not just something I would turn to at the end of my day to kind of allow me to decompress. And that's also, as we know now, or as I know now, that processed food and the chemicals and the things that it has in it, it's designed exactly for those things that it was doing. Like, it's designed to kind of get you hooked. It's designed to speak to your nervous system and all that in kind of the wrong ways, because it gets you hooked on the wrong things, and and it does kind of help calm you down in the moment and relieve you, so that you could kind of go to sleep and get ready to have another day like that, but it's getting you hooked on the wrong things, and it's getting hooked with the wrong things. And I didn't come from a upbringing of like even though we were playing sports as kids and growing up, and we were active as kids. I was an active kid. Like we was in these streets, like running around, playing football with friends and running. I was always so proud of being the second fastest in my class for so many years as a kid. I was always so proud of that. I remember being in like middle school and taking and being in PE, and like I remember I used to always be real proud of my calves. My calves always were like tight and strong, and like the muscles were. I always was like proud of that. you know, my dad tried to get us like hooked on working out as teenagers. Um, I say us meaning my mother's siblings, but it didn't really take with me because I was kind of I was like one of those cool nerds. That's what I feel like I was. Cause you have friends that are the cool kids, I also had friends who were the nerds. I had all kinds. I always had all kinds of friends. I had the friends that were the thugs, the troublemakers, all that stuff. And I felt like but I was always like the smart kid. Everybody knew I was a smart kid. I was the one who's going to answer all the questions in class. I was the one who's going to always have my hand raised. I was always going to be the one that led the group project or come up with the group project. I was always making the best grades and, straight A's and perfect attendance and all that stuff. And, but I felt like I was, kind of cool, or at least at times. I wasn't the cool kid. I definitely wasn't that. I wasn't the popular kid, but I could roll with that crowd, and I did at times. And there were times when I was just like known, but I wasn't popular. Anyway, we were active kids. I say all that to say that I was an active kid. Like we did a lot of things. We were always active. And so, but when I got to college, I started noticing I was starting to put on some weight. I wasn't as active anymore physically. And then definitely, and it didn't, I knew that I should be in college, and I think I tried to a little bit in college, but I was dealing with so many other issues in college that it was just like, I can't deal with that, not understanding the long-term effects of not being as active anymore, physically active anymore. And I was also obsessed with what I wanted my career to be. So it's like all these things that even when I was starting to become conscious of, as I grew up and went through college, like healthy things that even if I was starting to be introduced to them or become conscious of them, it wasn't enough for me to realize how big a role those healthy things needed to play in my life. I, I didn't get it that time. And then I'm working in the industry, and you're doing everything you can, or I'm doing everything I can to just get my career going as a filmmaker. You're spending all the money. You're working a regular job, but you're using all your disposable income to reinvest in your own projects. So you don't have anybody, helping you get your film career off the ground. And living in places like Los Angeles and New York, and trying to survive and all that. Got bills, the whole nine. And still not fixing the issue of the unhealthy lifestyle, the unhealthy habits, the bad eating, the not sleeping. There were times where I was editing something and I wasn't sleeping for 2 or 3 days straight. So anyway, there was a time where, like I said, there was a period of time when I was working with my business partners on this company, and that those 3 years were just the roughest years for me professionally, but also some rough years for me personally, because I realized I was not able to be myself in that situation. It was like a lot of the issues that had been kind of compounding and building up in my life in that situation, it's like they all came, it's like all my issues entered the same room and were just rumbling with each other for 3 years. That's how I would put it, you know. And I think by the end of that 3 years, my way of relieving as much of that as I can was to leave that company, right? But from there, it meant I needed to really start addressing what was left of those issues kind of one by one. And so from that point on, I would say from 2016 onward, I just started, I don't know, it was like the perfect time of my life to really start to redirect, you know. I think by then I was like, years ago. So I was maybe like 30, 32, 33. And at the time, and I just knew things had to change. I knew I had to get control of like my bad eating habits. By then I'd gained so much weight. I'd gained so much weight over the years from time I was in college. So like around 18, 19, 20, all the way up until 33, I had gained so much weight, and it was from the lack of physical activity, right? And it was from the bad eating. And both of those things were what they were because of my really bad stress practices. It were bad, you know, bad stress practices from the busy life that I was, what do I want to say? The busy life that what am I trying to say? Because that level of, I don't know. I think it was. I think part of the reason I was so busy, I was making myself so busy, although even from a child onward, I think it was my way of coping. I think my busyness is my way of coping. You don't have to be as busy as I was, like, and I think that was my way of coping with a lot of like trauma that I dealt with in my early life. Like I said, I grew up in a kind of a violent household with domestic violence. I'll put it that way, and I think that was part of my trauma response, was to make myself busy, make myself have something to do. It definitely was addressing like, okay, build something for yourself so that you don't have to stay here with these people. And it was kind of possibly also my excuse to be out of the house as often as I could as a kid. A lot of things. I think it was my trauma response. And I had a friend tell me when I was like in my early 30s, and she told me once, what you run from, you run to. And so I feel like that's what I was doing. I think I thought that I was leaving like a lot of the trauma and the problems and the things I didn't like about my early life and my upbringing, leaving it behind and trying to create so many things in your life that could work out for you. But really you're just running to it, you know, you're just running to it because if you don't understand that, if you're not conscious that that's what you're doing, yeah, you won't realize you're doing it when you don't even mean to be, you know? So my relationship with stress and food, using food to like, again, like I said before, not just to kind of, use it to like decompress myself, or really it's it's comfort. You're using food as comfort, basically. Comfort from a long day, comfort from something in your life that's not going right, that you're trying to, that you're, now I know, your body has ways of talking to you, talking to you about things that are not right for you. Your body has ways of like, kind of like letting you know, hey, this situation you're going through doesn't feel right, or this person that's in your life doesn't feel right, or how you feel about this situation, like you need to pay attention to that. Your body has ways of telling you that. And I think I was blocking that with food, instead of always dealing with what it was in my life that wasn't working, for me. And it just got really bad. I put on like so much weight over the years. And so once I became more aware of myself and more conscious, I grew in my consciousness about myself. That's when I was like, okay, you got to start, you got to pull back on this work life, and then you got to start, addressing these things within you, and coming up with a healthier solution. And even turning things around was a multi-year process, and I'm still not there yet. I'm still not there yet, because I often find myself having a lot of setbacks, because at the same time I built this small little filmmaking career for so many years, 15 years in, 17 years in, then 20 years in, and you don't want to abandon all the work that you put in for so many years, even though it needs to look different. It needs to look different. And I never wanted my career to kill me. I never wanted my ambitions to ultimately kill me, So it was just always about a struggle with the balance. So even once I knew better, it still took a lot of time to start, turning things around and going in a different direction. And my biggest challenge, even still to this day, is a stressful situation sets me back. Like if I have a stressful situation, I don't have as many stressful situations happen anymore, but when they do, they still are extremely stressful. And because I'm still building my life, building my finances, building, my stability, those stressful moments, like I feel like I can't, and again, this is something I'm still working on, because there is a way to do it. I'm still finding out the best ways that work for me, but I can't always like decompress and like in a healthy way address the stress, because I feel like I'm oftentimes not in a space where I can kind of do it in a healthy way. I have to kind of do it in like on the run. I'm trying to like fix myself on the run, if that makes any sense. And so it's a lifelong struggle, and I know I'm gonna get there. I'm never gonna give up on myself, and I've changed a lot about my work life at this point. And one of the biggest things that has helped me, outside of things like therapy, outside of things like calendaring my work life and scheduling my work life with a lot more care. Well, with a lot more care to myself. Even though I just got back from Europe a couple months ago, and if I had my choice, and if I had my choice, I would have scheduled that in a more sensitive way to my needs. But so that still happens at times where you kind of don't get it the way you want it, where you need it, but it's always the goal, right? And but one of the biggest things that I realized that helped me, and I learned this starting like years ago, is just breathing. Like concentrating on your breathing. The last few series projects that I did that lasted for like a year or more filming, filming can be very stressful. Um, for me, definitely filming is. A lot of people feel like filming is a lot of fun. I don't feel like filming is fun. In the early days, I think I did, but filming is not fun to me. It's like a necessary. It's just how I get to what I'm trying to accomplish, which is tell my stories. Visually. In order to do that, you got to film. But it still can be very stressful for me, especially like dealing with personalities that you just realize you just don't care for certain type of personalities anymore, or certain issues that certain people come with, certain ways that other people like to work. You just don't like that anymore. So I know what I like. I know really, you know, I know for sure what I don't like nowadays in my work life. And when I still have to kind of come up against those things, it's stressful and frustrating having to work with those things because you just have to, you know. Um, but I have gotten a lot better at picking, doing a better job picking the type of people that I work with moving forward. Um, but it's still not perfect. Uh, but breathing has brought a lot to my life in terms of teaching me how to like calm down. It's about being in tune to your nervous system. You know, your nervous system, it speaks to us all the time, and it wasn't until like I was much older, like in this era of my life that I'm in, um, that I realized I've had this issue, kind of this fight with my nervous system since I was a child, because I grew up in the environment that I grew up in, and it shaped my entire life, you know? And I wish that kids, when, not to get political, but like, it's like, I wish that this country would realize the things that kids really need to feel prepared. And things like just how to be a healthy person holistically. That's really where I think you should come from, mentally, physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. I wish that, and I want to be a part of a society that prioritizes those things for the young people, because we have too many examples of us who didn't figure some of this stuff out until we were like mid-age, mid-age. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my relationship with stress, my relationship with um, my nervous system, my struggles with things like food, my struggles with things like um, time management, um, staying physically active, um, sleep, all those things. Being a lot more in tune to your body and what your body is trying to tell you in any situation, and learning how to listen to your body. Like learning how to listen to your body. Like I listen to my body so much nowadays. Like for everything really. And I've learned how to compartmentalize my life and deal with situations a lot better now, because I'm just doing something as simple as listening to what my body is telling me, at any given moment. And, but the journey for healthy life, wellness is ongoing. And so, yeah, I'm going to be even breaking down some of these ideas a lot more but this was just kind of like an overview on this topic. Hopefully it made sense. Hopefully you got something from it. And I would also like to hear from you, like, how do you guys handle stress? Like, what's been your stress management in your life? Do you know where it comes from? Do you know where it stems from? Do you know what created it? When did you have your aha moment? What has been your struggles with it? You know, do you have issues with food? Like, is your relationship to food tied to your emotional state? I'm an emotional person, so that's a big thing for me. But anyway, these are all about wellness and how to have wellness in your life, especially if you're an artist or a creative person, if you're an artist and a creative person, you're kind of one of those probably people who are all over the place anyway. So all the more reason to kind of like have things a little better ordered in your life. And when I say better, I mean healthy. Have things more ordered, health in a healthy way in your life, because it's going to surface at some point in your life. It's going to surface. It's going to snatch you up at some point, I believe. And so the sooner you can get a hold of it, the more you can mitigate it when it happens, and pivot. So that's it for now. This is the Artist Temple.